Welcome to the Table Podcast, where we discuss issues of God and culture, brought to you by Dallas Theological Seminary.
Hi, I'm Bill Hendricks, Executive Director for Christian Leadership at the Hendricks Center, and I'm so glad to welcome you to this edition of the Table Podcast, where we discuss issues of God and culture. And I am so delighted to have a couple of friends of mine that I'm becoming closer to by the day. Luke and Abby Hatteberg, welcome to the Table Podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, this is a great story that needs to be told, the work that God has given the Hattebergs to do. And Luke, this story, you know, obviously it starts at your birth and beyond, but we're not going to go all the way back
Not
there.
that far
But
back.
So you came through Dallas Seminary as a student.
Yes, sir.
And you got all the way through the program.
I did. I survived.
You survived.
I did.
Which tells those who are seminary students there's hope.
There is, yes.
But once you graduate, what was your intention and what happened?
Yeah, so I think for both Abby and I, we had kind of a love for youth ministry. And so for me, I came into DTS going, I want to be a youth pastor. In fact, it was a youth pastor sending youth pastor. I wanted to learn all of it and get into it. And it was awesome. And Jay Sedgwick played a big part of that, which was really exciting. And then as we were finishing, or actually while we were doing seminary, we started Wayfaring kind of on the side, and it just kind of continued to grow. And So
let me jump in there.
Sure.
So you're married during seminary. So you played this important role of a seminary wife and got him through. Were you working your way through?
I was, yeah. We actually started seminary literally 7 days after we got married.
Yeah, dude. Bad idea.
And so
you need to pray about that one.
Most people don't do their honeymoon at a
Not
seminary.
quite. Yeah,
we didn't even have a honeymoon because of that. We had a delayed honeymoon. So we
honeymoon.
really were committed and jumped right in. So we started. I was teaching at the time. I had just gotten back from teaching in Italy, came back and was teaching like at a very small charter school in downtown Dallas. And he jumped right into seminary and I jumped right into teaching. We had just gotten off, a 2-year long distance relationship. And so we definitely had a lot on our plates.
Yeah.
But the intent was always youth ministry and then potentially some sort of international work. We both really had a heart for Europe. And so that was kind of in the back of our minds too, but definitely a focus on youth.
So you kind of got this vision working.
Yep, absolutely.
But then you said you started a little business on the side. And what was the name of that business again?
Initially?
Yeah, we did rebrand.
Yes,
but
initially it was Degno di Nota, which meant noteworthy in Italian, which we thought was clever. But then
but not
helpful for branding purposes, for marketing, any of that kind of stuff. And so then we changed it to Wayfaring.
Wayfaring.
Yes, sir.
Spell that out for our listeners.
Wayfaren.
Yeah.
Wayfaren.
Wayfaren.
Yes,
Now, I happen to know the story of who came up with that and so forth.
Yeah.
Let's just cut to, what does Wayfaren actually stand for or mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's technically not a real word.
Okay.
It came from, wayfarer or wayfaring.
Wayfarer.
The idea of almost traveling without a specific intent in mind.
Yeah.
So like the idea of wandering is when the best traveling happens, is what we really...
Wandering with not so much the idea of being lost, but just...
exactly. Just the beauty in the wandering.
Let's just see what comes along.
Yeah. And so
for the purpose of enjoyment. Like the getting lost, in a sense, is part of the beauty of it all.
So where does this travel wandering theme come from?
Great question.
We obviously had done a lot of traveling. I had gone backpacking through Europe. She had spent a year in Italy. And so, and then we had also spent a summer doing youth ministry in Spain with Youth for Christ. And so we had all of these pictures of these beautiful places. And so we had kind of had a love for traveling, just for how much the Lord had formed us and what he had done in us through that. And so that's kind of where a lot of it started. And so then it was just a matter of going, okay, what are we going to do with these pictures? Because we just had these computers that were loaded with all of these beautiful places. And so it was just like, okay, how do we share this? And so we tried selling the pictures, but that just didn't quite work, didn't quite fit because there's no connection with it. And so it was more going, okay, we want to kind of inspire people to go and see these places for themselves and enjoy them personally. And so that's kind of how the love for travel started, and then how it kind of morphed into a little bit more than that. Because the whole woodworking side was completely an interception. Like I said, we started with youth ministry, and then the Lord just changed so much of the trajectory. So
I'm hearing youth, and then we've traveled, and we got pictures, and then I hear woodworking suddenly introduced, and suddenly there's this business called Wayfaren. So how does all that?
Yeah.
Together?
So like Luke said, we really both always had a real strong interest in travel. I grew up traveling a lot. My dad worked for American Airlines, so we, were flying all over growing up, and not as much.
Not as much. We had some road trips.
But we really always connected on that. Just initially when we first met, that was something that we really connected on, and really had a passion for travel and other cultures, and getting outside of the Dallas bubble. And so we initially kind of connected on that, and initially got married, wanted to do something with youth, had in the back of our minds like maybe something with youth abroad. And so we did this internship in Spain with YFC, Youth for Christ, with some amazing people over there, and loved it, and it definitely instilled our passion for that. And we still, at that time, that was 2 years into marriage, in 2011, we still at that time thought the Lord was leading us
to do that.
Down that road.
So what was the woodworking part?
Sure.
Yeah, so after writing and reading and writing and reading over and over, I think I just needed a creative outlet. I needed something to do with my hands. I need something to separate from just the content where I can kind of release and relax. And so anyway.
By the way, did nobody talk to you about, people that love to work with their hands typically don't end up in seminaries?
Yes, this is true. Well, a lot of people just didn't understand what was going on, or they'd make some joke about how that's what Jesus would do or something. And I was like, I don't really.
But I don't even think you really discovered your love for working with your hands until you were 3/4 through seminary.
Yeah. Because we started it just on a whim, wanting to raise our kids around just making things. And so we bought a table saw and then just started, and some friends of ours encouraged us to start making things, and we made this pushpin travel map, and they were like, you should sell this online. And we're like, that's crazy, absolutely not. And they kept pushing us and encouraged us to do it, and so we did. And then the Lord just kind of started to grow it from there, and it continued and continued. And then
so people started to go to your website and
buy buy the
pushpin
travel maps. Yes, sir.
What'd they look like?
So to answer your question, the goal was really to make a really beautiful pushpin travel map. So it really started because we saw a gap in the market. He was in the thick of seminary, I was still in the thick of teaching, and I think both of us were really looking for a creative outlet. We couldn't travel at that time. He still had a year plus who knows how much longer left. And we were feeling a little restless, I think, and really just looking for a creative outlet. And the Lord hadn't, brought the end of seminary or brought like what that next door was yet for us.
Clear direction.
And so we kind of, to backtrack how it started, was we were at dinner at some friends one night, and they had just got back from a trip and had this huge map on their wall, pinned where they had been, where they wanted to go. And anyways, we spent the whole night talking about their adventures and our adventures, and just such a lovely night of swapping stories. And we left thinking like, wow, like
that was amazing.
How wonderful to be able to, connect in that way. And but like that map was really ugly. It was really ugly. And so then we kind of launched us into a hunt for a pushpin travel map, and we couldn't find anything on the market that we felt was really beautifully crafted in a really timeless and really high quality way. Everything was. Yeah,
so,
go ahead.
So let me interject, if you don't mind my asking, why is it important that a travel map with push pins be attractive?
Do you want to take that one?
Sure. I think I mean, our lives were changed in travel.
Yeah.
Whether it's the people, whether it's the places, whether it's just those moments that you have just with the Lord, and it's just you on a walk in a place that you've never been. And so when you have these moments where you're just like, man, I was changed on that trip, and then you come home and it's just this little goofy poster that you just kind of have tacked on to the side of your wall or something like that. Whereas when it is this beautiful thing, you can look at it and you can enjoy it, and it's a discussion piece, and you have conversations around it with people, and they're like, oh, where did you go and what happened and all of that. And so to have something really worthy of those moments, I was just like, yes, this was meaningful and beautiful.
So the word worthy is really important there.
Yeah.
So you've had this profound experience, travel,
Sure.
and you want the way that is remembered and the way the narrative of that is told
To be just as beautiful
to
as the adventures and
Yeah.
experiences themselves.
Great.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I think, and something we've learned, I think, in business, I think at first, I struggle with, okay, so like my natural inclination is for things to be, really well designed and, have a bit of a modern take on it and feel fresh and new.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can feel a bit like materialistic or shallow, maybe. But I think, we've really learned that like the Lord is the creator of aesthetic beauty. Like he's the initial creator of that. So when we can make something that like is so detailed and we've thought of every inch of it, it really is like a nod to him and is a way of, like we said, taking those adventures and those experiences and making something that we feel is a little more worthy of those life-changing experiences the Lord has brought your way.
Well, Colossians 1 says that all things have come into existence through him.
Yes, exactly.
And so that he's paid attention to every inch of every part of creation. So why wouldn't we?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well,
yes.
and that's one of the things I think as I've working with my hands, I think very often, and for obvious reason, there's the Genesis one where he's speaking these things into existence, and it's like, yes, obviously. But there's a section in Genesis 2 when it talks about how he's forming. And when I think of the things that you just buy your table at Pottery Barn or at IKEA or whatever it is.
By the way, nothing against Pottery Barn or IKEA.
Yes.
Just want to emphasize that.
In contrast, if I've made a table, I'm envisioning like what the conversations are going to be like there, who I'm going to have, like what that looks like. I've thought about the height, the width, the dimensions, how that goes together, the finish, the wood, all of these different things. I care about all of those dimensions of this table. And so once I'm using it, there's a very different type of care that I take for it, opposed to something that is by no means necessarily meaningless, but just doesn't have that heart behind it. So in Genesis 2, when it talks about how he's forming us and making us, like there's a very intimate interaction, and you just think of how much he cares. And so I think for me, when I look at the different things in my house, and it's just like, yes, that means something special. And so it's been exciting to kind of be in that mindset sometimes.
So you've just described, it seems to me, the soul of an artisan, of a craftsperson.
Absolutely.
And of course, let's just take that table that's bought from Pottery Barn or IKEA. Somebody designed that somewhere.
Right.
And put some thought into, a whole bunch of factors like what's the use of this going to be, who's going to buy it, what can they afford. And so they had various design features that they had to, build into that and then go through a distribution mechanism. And, of course, the way our culture's become today, goods are made, fairly high quality and durability for relatively small amounts of money.
Yeah.
Okay? And so for that reason, we've gotten away from that direct artisan, hands-on craftsmanship in category after category in our world. You think even 200 or 300 years ago, so much of, certainly before the Industrial Revolution, just about everything was made by a craftsperson.
Everything was
somewhere.
handmade.
Yeah.
Down to horseshoes, which are about as pedestrian as you can get, right? But, but then those same smiths who were making horseshoes, they'd also make, gates or fences or ironworks that are just amazing, and likewise with all kinds of other material. And so you're a bit of a unicorn in our culture.
Yeah.
In that you're putting that kind of time and effort into
Sure.
in your case, wood, right?
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel like in that season, like I think we definitely felt like a not unicorn, maybe more at that time we'd think black sheep.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, like we're finishing up seminary and we have this business we launched on the side, and like, oh gosh, we went to seminary to like start a business.
Yeah.
Like we put all this time
and a lot
money
of times
and
even
so,
there'd be guys when they hear what I did, they'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
right. It feels
Like I
almost
quit
like a
ministry.
right.
And you're
It
just
definitely.
like-
I think we really
it's
had
a
to
little
work through
different.
some insecurities about
Like you'd sold out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, like it was a
yes.
casualty, like man down, and it's like
Right.
You didn't have what it took to.
right.
do
No,
ministry.
and that's how
Right.
sometimes, not
Right.
always, but there were
No,
times where
yeah.
that's how it is talked about, and I think does almost a disservice to both those who are in vocational ministry and those who are not.
Correct.
Because I think being trained in the Word, no matter what you do, is very valuable and very powerful, and I think it radically changes your worldview and the way that you treat people and that you do work, and so.
Well, and truth be told, to deliver an outstanding sermon, say, takes some real artisanship.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
gift.
Absolutely.
To mentor and disciple somebody as it is done by Christ in the New Testament
Yeah.
in today's world, there's some artisanship and craftsmanship that goes into that. as well.
Absolutely.
So, enough said on that point.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you're making
Maps.
maps,
Right.
Yes, sir.
and you're starting to sell them online, and it's growing, and you suddenly
Yeah.
realize, whoa, we got something here.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
Well, yeah, at that time he was a youth pastor at a local church.
Yeah.
And things were
They're going well.
Yeah, growing. I think faster than we had anticipated. I think
Yeah.
we never set out to create a business.
No. I mean, I used the high schoolers as free labor because it was
Yeah.
basically like I'm finishing seminary and I'm working at this church and all these orders are coming in. And so I'm trying to figure out what in the world am I going to
Yeah.
do with this? And so I saw the difference between what these guys were like on a Sunday morning or a Wednesday night versus how they were when they were in the shop with me, and the amount that they would open up, the things that we would talk about. I'd get them on a good day and I'd get them on a bad day. And it
Okay,
wasn't
so
just,
now you've opened up another door.
oh, totally.
Another layer of
Yes.
mentoring.
Well, and that's kind of where it started to bubble over into where even after the kids graduated, still wanting to be involved, still wanting to help. And so I think that just even further solidified like, oh, this is just as much of a ministry as it is working in the church. And so that, I think, has just continued to be the pattern throughout as
I think
we've
just
done
sparked like a
Wayfaren.
question in our minds, like, could, our ministry look different than we initially,
Yeah.
this picture we had in our minds of us,
Working at a
working in a
church and-
church, being in youth ministry, potentially going abroad, which, I mean, that has taken years. I would say probably up until we got our first commercial space 2 years ago. The
Yeah.
Lord took 4 or 5 years to work that out in us, like
Yeah.
a confidence in that, a joy in that, not the insecurity that we felt of like, yeah, we went to DTS, but
We're now doing this
we're
other
running
thing.
a business now.
The picture that came to my mind as you sort of described these teens kind of working
Yeah.
as free labor, as
Yes.
you called it. So let's go back to another carpenter, woodworker, Jesus, and he spends the first 30 years of his life apparently, working with his brothers as a carpenter, which is really not just wood, but probably stonemason
Yeah,
sure.
and all kinds
Craftsmen
of
in general.
yeah. And we don't have a lot of information there, but it seems reasonable that we can deduce if he was indeed a carpenter. He gets up kind of about the age I perceive you were, 28, 29,
Yeah.
getting up close to his, formally starting his ministry.
Ministry, right?
Yeah.
So imagine you're like a 17, 18, 19-year-old kid,
Yeah.
and you're on a job or in the shop with this guy named Jesus. And so he knows a few things,
Yeah.
about wood and
Right.
working it. And, there's the work, but then there's the guy.
Yeah.
You like want to go back there and just hang out with him because you ask him questions and
Yeah.
he says these things and you're like, what does that mean?
Right.
But he's such a good guy.
Yeah.
So that's what you were doing.
Yeah, I would say as a third party looking in, like that is couldn't be a more true picture of what happened in the shop with Luke and all these, so many, young men that have come through our shop now. It was just a, really beautiful means of relationship that I think some really neat conversations can happen when you're doing something else and you're not just there's sometimes
in ministry mode.
When you're like sitting there sanding boxes together,
Forever.
like a really neat, forever. Some really neat conversations that can happen.
Yeah.
And I think as we got into the business, throughout the years, we realized that.
Well, and an even further layer on that, Abby, is it's not like Luke is, sitting down across the table from some 16-year-old going, tell me about yourself.
Right, exactly.
Not so
No,
much.
no. We're doing something over here.
It feels a little more approachable.
And then suddenly the 16-year-old is telling Luke about himself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it just opens up just an honesty that I just think is unique and is different. And it was fun because as we, transitioned out from the youth ministry at the church, I think for me especially, just having gone through DTS, like I knew what that was like. I knew how difficult it was. I knew the fears, the questions, the frustrations, the fears, all of them. And it's like, and I had just always wanted someone to come alongside me and be like, hey, man, I've been through that. I know what that's like. I know how scary that is. And so I just was like, 5 minutes down the road, but I think it was also going, let me step in. And it's not in the sense of where you're working at a church and sometimes you're like kind of doing an internship, kind of hoping you're going to get a job from it at the end of it. Whereas with this, there was just a purity to it all, to where it was like, I'm wanting to send you out after this job into wherever it is that the Lord has you going. And
so you're saying, when you were working with the youth group, it's teens at the church.
Yes, sir.
But then later it's seminarians.
It's been seminarians, yeah. And so I think, currently our studio manager, our last 4 apprentice have all been DTS students.
So pretty intentionally after we kind of stepped away from youth ministry, pretty intentionally after that, we've hired almost exclusively DTS students.
Yeah. And so the intentionality there has been, obviously they have some. That's a job, and they learn some skills.
Absolutely, yeah.
But the real intentionality is there, as I thought I heard you articulate it, is, look, I know what you're going through.
Yeah.
Let me just bring you into my world here, in hopes that you'll talk to me, and in that process, I can encourage you and tell you what I know.
Oh yeah.
But it's not, again, okay, I'm going to come mentor you.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, it's directly. It was more. Yeah, really
on the
indirect,
way.
Beautiful thing that kind of
that's cool.
The Lord, kind of naturally evolved.
Yeah. Well, and it's been an honor because I think there's been a lot of the seasons that some of these people have gone through as they've been with us that have been really heavy. Like there have been a couple of times, whether it's family stuff, whether it's marriage stuff, whether it's work stuff, whether it's identity stuff, whether it's sin struggles, whatever it is. Yeah. And we'll be sanding or finishing or whatever it is. And after a long day's work, just talking about anything and everything. And it's just been really kind of God, I think, to open up a new understanding of what ministry is and what ministry can be, to where it's not limited to the church and to where it's going to be, you are doing kingdom work no matter where it is that you are. And so I think recognizing that, yes, there are spiritual gifts that he's maybe given you, but it's not like this is my superpower and this is what I do professionally type of thing. But it's more like, the way that I've thought about it is, it's like a chisel, in the sense of I use a chisel all the time for a number of different things. And so I think putting more stock in the craftsman rather than the tool, in the sense of going, okay, Lord, how are you going to use me? Because I want to be fit for that. I want to be used for that. I want to be available for that. Mm-hmm. And that's different than going, okay, what's my job? Well, okay, if this is my degree and if this is what I should do. And because he's going to use you in so many different ways. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to say that.
Well, we do a lot of integration of faith and work topics on the Table podcast, and so what you're bringing in here fits right into that. Many of our listeners, they don't have their own business, they're not entrepreneurs, but they're a manager in a company or a supervisor, or they're an associate pastor or some position in a church where they have people reporting to them, and de facto they're actually managing people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly they're interacting with people, and even people that aren't managing or supervising have coworkers.
Yeah.
And Henry Ford, the auto builder, said when you hire a hand, because that's what they called the workers in those days, when you hire a hand, you get the whole rest of the body thrown in. And his point was that people bring everything they are to work.
Yeah.
And when you hire a person, you hire the whole person, which means they bring not only their skills and whatever value creating assets they have for the job, just what you said. They bring their desires, their hopes, their aspirations. They bring their fears, their failures, the problems from home, their relational challenges. They bring all of that.
Yeah.
And that means that Christians are frequently, if not constantly, in what boil down to pastoral moments.
Oh, absolutely.
And soul moments.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a alumni of the seminary now with the Lord. It was a good friend of my dad named Ray Stedman, and Ray and Dad, a bunch of them went through the seminary together back in the 40s and so forth. And Ray went off to California and started Peninsula Bible Church out there near Stanford in Palo Alto. And I have a recording of him on campus here in 1984, and he was talking on Ephesians 4, and he was talking about the pastoral gift. He said, we tend to think of the pastoral gift as being exclusively sort of, the professionals in the church, your minister. He said, actually, that gift is distributed far more widely in the body of Christ than we realize. The reason being, there are so many pastoral needs in this world.
Right.
And every workplace has loads of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, to go back to Jesus, you see lots of pastoral moments that he finds himself in where he's ministering to somebody's soul. And that's what you're describing here. And so you're a great model here, I think, for our listeners of what people can do. You don't have to be ordained to have a ministry. You basically have to be aware, and you have to be mindful of what can I do to bring encouragement, to bring perspective, just to pray for somebody. I can't solve their problem, but I'm there for them spiritually.
Well, and I think one of the things that I never would have anticipated and never would have asked for, as far as something that I think has been exciting to see how the Lord has used the business as a ministry. But for me personally, the lesson I never would have asked for is a constant leading out of weakness. I think with a small business, when someone makes a mistake, everybody knows. When someone succeeds, everybody knows. But in running a business like this, knowing, okay, they're going to see what it looks like to fail. And so I need to show, okay, what does it look like to apologize, to take responsibility for how I've made a mistake, and that I know that it impacts them or customers or my family or whoever it is. And then there's just this constant figuring things out. Just as an entrepreneur, you're constantly learning because you've got so many different facets, so many different things, so many different responsibilities. And so for me going, okay, I want to be as faithful of a husband and father and friend and boss and like all of these things, but I'm going to make mistakes. And so I think knowing, okay, I don't have to be perfect, but if I can try and be faithful, and I can be patient in knowing, okay, I'm here with people, and I also have to be patient with myself and go, okay, Lord, you are working on me during this time as well. So I never wanted to be, in essence, that type of leader. You think of someone who's going to be strong and right all the time. And so I think it's definitely been a humbling experience to go, I can't do everything. There are more responsibilities and things to be done than I can, but going, babe, this is where I made a mistake, or to our employees, or to, a customer, whatever it is, and owning that.
So Abby, you must be an immensely blessed woman to be married to a man who owns his mistakes and apparently apologizes.
It happens 100% of the time.
The mistakes, they do. They do. No, it's so the goal.
You've seen this happen.
No, he's a really humble leader. Definitely.
I can see that.
Yeah, he really is. He's, I'm the numbers one, I'm the efficiency one, but he's the employee care. He is the
he's your resident pastor,
resident chaplain. He is making sure. I'm making sure we make money, and he's making sure we have a heart still. He keeps us.
Boy, I wish every business in this country could have both of those.
Right?
You should see conflict. There's a whole
chief
different
financial
world in that
officer,
one.
Right?
And a chief compassion
Well,
officer.
but a lot of times though, there's
a tension.
It's really difficult.
Yes.
I mean, the business has been very challenging on our marriage.
Yeah, definitely.
And so,
how do you navigate that challenge?
A lot of prayer, and repentance, I would say. No, I mean, it's been
a lot of times we haven't navigated it well.
Yeah.
To be perfectly frank, it's been a real struggle for us. It's been like Lord, why have you brought this in our life? Because this is really causing our relationship a lot of tension that seems like we could avoid it had we
done something different.
And so I think he's just now in the last probably few years, not even a year and a half, really brought us to a place of slowly learning how to respect and value those differences.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really the key.
Well, because I think we saw each other as the hindrance or the problem or whatever it is. We just wanted to blame shift with whatever the different season was. And we would assume if this wasn't the case, things would be better, which is a lie.
Right.
Working in a broken world is always going to be difficult, no matter if it's vocational ministry or otherwise. And so I think kind of going, because we went through seasons where we're like, all right, Lord, can you take this away from us, actually? Because we don't know what we're doing. We feel like we're struggling. And I think in his kindness, he's kept us and going, I want you to see me. I want you to be dependent. And I want you to learn how to love and see one another in a truly beautiful way because I made them that way. And then how that teamwork plays itself out.
So that's a beautiful point. And I heard you say a moment ago that in a fallen world, things are always going to be challenging. Mm-hmm. So let me just put a thought experiment out there that in a not fallen world, things would still be challenging. We tend to think if Adam and Eve, the garden, they hadn't sinned, they had kids.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Here we are today, we're working, and without the fallenness of the world, it's hard to imagine. But there would still be
work.
Well, there'd still be mistakes made. Like, somebody would drop a hammer on their foot.
Sure.
Or you'd mash I'm sure you've hit your thumb with a hammer, right?
Oh, my stars.
I'm sure you've added up the numbers and said, oh, my gosh, we forgot to put this in.
Absolutely.
There's a comma that's supposed to be there.
Just last week.
Human beings are limited, and they're going to make mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what you just articulated, it sounds to me, is it's the redemptive version of what happens in a fallen world that would have happened in a non-fallen world, which is, let's realize that we have differences here. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, hit your thumb with that hammer.
No.
I just wasn't paying attention. I really apologize for that.
Sure.
But you'd have the grace to say, I understand that. I'm sorry. And you'd have the grace to recognize the differences. I'm so glad, Abby, that you're making me pay attention to these numbers.
Yes. Yeah. We are learning.
And I'm so glad,
yes.
Luke, that you come up with all these wild and crazy ideas.
That you're thinking of our ways to love our employees.
And thinking of ways to love our employees.
Because we need, like you said, if every company could have both, that would be. I think we're learning.
And the key words that you said were, isn't it wonderful that God has made us this way?
Yeah.
It all goes back to the Creator and that we're made in His image to cause this world and its people to flourish.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And so that's what you're slowly
but
trying to bring about in a fallen world.
Right.
Well, and I think at times, because as far as we know, obviously, is that Jesus was either working with wood or some people go stonemason, some whatever. It doesn't matter. It's more, I think, the idea of craftsman. And so I think for me, trying to understand that mindset and to where it's kind of like, I know that there have been times where I have gotten a splinter that is like the size of a samurai sword in my arm. And I'm just like, what in the world? But I've thought different times of going, when Jesus was working with whatever it is that he was working with, when he got a splinter, that is just going, he would, whether it's the thorns, he's like, this is not supposed to be this way. We're not supposed to, whether it's splinters or, but even to the point where like he would have known the species of wood that the cross was made out of, that he was hung on. And it's kind of like, and it's not just because he's omniscient, though he is, but it's because he would have worked with it. He would have seen it. And so exactly. And so I just think that there's a different type of material element that I've gotten the privilege to enjoy, but at the same time, I think it's grown into a much bigger vision of understanding this made world was made by someone who worked in this world when it was broken, though he designed it to not be that way.
Yeah.
I perceive, Luke, that you do a lot of what in this institution and institutions like it we call theological reflection, which means in the doing of the work, obviously doing the work and paying attention to the work, but as you're doing the work, in the moments when you can, sort of pondering the significance of the work from God's perspective, and also sort of the theological implications of what this work is telling you about God, about the world, about yourself. And tell us a little bit more about how you do that.
I mean, I think it started kind of where it's like, okay, what does it mean for something to be beautiful? I think I'd only ever heard that type of language primarily as metaphor. I feel like in the church, and towards like, this is a beautiful verse, or this is a beautiful idea, or something like that. And I don't know. I sometimes struggled with that if I didn't understand it or whatever. And so I think in understanding that beauty is something much bigger, and to whether it's a theology of aesthetics, whether it's how something is attractive and why something is attractive. And so for me, I think it was being taught here how to think, how to listen, and how to almost marinate on the scriptures and letting that form the imagination, how that would inform the way that I see the world. And so I think it's been more seeing other godly men do it really well, and whether it's through what I've read or different conversations. And so it's definitely been a process, and I think God is patient, and he gives me cookies on the lower shelf at times. And but it's been a kind way of saying, I want you to see me as beautiful. I want you to enjoy me being God, not just as a provider, not just as something that does something, but just enjoying him. And I think it's been the time that I've had to just sit and work sometimes by myself, where it's like, but he sees that work. He sees the care that's being taken, and that it matters to him.
Well, one of the beautiful things that you all have created, in addition to the maps, are boxes. Sure. These crafted boxes.
Keepsake boxes. Yeah.
Keepsake boxes.
Yes.
And tell us how you find your customers using those.
Sure. So we had the maps launched in 2012, and those were, took off more than we thought. And then we also, in 2014, kind of similar experience, we saw there was a gap in the market for a really well-designed, timeless keepsake box. And so that's when we launched, I think 2014, we launched our keepsake boxes, originally with the intent of people keeping mementos from their travels.
More of a glorified shoebox.
Really, fitting within that travel niche that we felt like we had found really well. And so that was the original kind of vision. And then after we launched them, we kind of realized that probably only 15% of people were purchasing them for that purpose. More people were purchasing them for weddings, engagements, lots of deaths.
Lots of deaths.
Graduations. Yeah. So
tell us about that.
Go ahead.
There was where it really started to change into where instead of it being just kind of a not a junk drawer by any means, but instead of it being just for trinkets and whatnot, I was at the workbench, and I just had a bunch of the boxes laid out, and I had the different lids for all of the different customers, because once we started doing custom laser engravings on them, then that's when they really started to take off. And one was to celebrate a newborn. One was to celebrate, it was a bereavement box for a stillborn. One was a baptism. One was a confirmation. One was a birthday. One was a 5-year anniversary. One was for a wedding. One was for a retirement. And 2 were for a funeral of this couple that passed.
So these iconic soul moments in people's lives.
And it just, like, I didn't even put 2 and 2 together, but I realized, like, these are not just common boxes for these people. And we've gotten notes from moms who will send us messages into where it's like, I never wanted to remember the loss of my baby. I never wanted to ever have to talk about it. I never wanted to have to relive it. I never wanted to think about that pain. But in getting to have a box that was worthy of that moment and of what that meant in that season, it's helped me heal. It's helped me learn to love that season, whether it's what the Lord has done through me or whatever. But starting to see like these are much more important than just common boxes. And so that's...
We talk about, again, another theological term, means of grace. In other words, God gives us certain ways in which we can experience His grace, or we can do like sails that we can put up and catch the wind of His grace. But it sounds like in the creation of that box for that mother, you gave her a means of the grace of being able to grieve in such a way that the grief became redemptive instead of destructive. She found a way to think about her stillborn without it wounding her soul over and over and over and over and over
in the same way.
Instead, it brought back tender memories and the best of the child. That's a beautiful thing.
And I think we started slowly realizing that it opened our eyes to a whole nother kind of aspect of how we could tangibly really minister to people in a way that we never anticipated.
Well, and it opened up.
You wouldn't have seen that coming.
No, and I think, Abby, you can speak to this better than I can, but as far as there were some different organizations that we were able to kind of get paired with. One in particular we've really, really loved.
Right. So then we... once our eyes were open to this, then we kind of started tangibly trying to seek out opportunities to utilize these boxes to, minister and serve. That's a great way to say it. And so maybe about 2 years ago now, we started partnering with actually local organization. Everyone should go look them up, called Able Speaks.
Able Speaks?
Able Speaks, ABEL.
Like
and we... they found us, actually.
Not knowing we were in Dallas.
Yeah, not knowing we were in Dallas. Complete divine, just the Lord just
by
put
a
us
college
together.
pastor and his wife up at Watermark.
Yeah, and so they had started this organization to minister to families who have chosen to carry a child with a life-limiting illness to term. Yeah. So these parents are choosing not to abort, not to take any other means, but to carry this child to term, even though they know that the child will
not live.
Most likely, right?
Yeah, because it was trisomy 18.
That was their baby.
That's what inspired a lot of it.
So now we partner with them and we provide the Keepsake boxes for these families that are, they connect with families through hospitals in Dallas.
Yeah.
And we give them a Keepsake box.
Yeah, and in there's like, whether it's books, whether it's literature, whether it's prayers, there's a necklace as well.
Yeah, so it's filled with personalized things for this child.
And it's, it has been a rough and humbling experience, because we went to the birthday event last year, to where they get together and all of the families that have gone through the Able Speaks service and they've cared for and all of that, they're there and they talk about Able Speaks, but then there's this moment and oh my gosh, Abby and I were just a wreck. We were in tears because they would, if a picture was available, there'd be the picture, and either way there'd also be the name, and there would just be this moment of silence for these little ones. And I mean, you see the parents like around the room and their little, the balloon and all of this. And it was heartbreaking, because it's like, I remember seeing that little one's name engraved on this box. Right. And I mean, it has just been so humbling. And it's an honor to get to step into that area of brokenness for a family and love them in such a simple, making a box.
Tangible way.
Well, once again, the picture that comes to my mind here as you go to these folks, many of whom you've made these boxes for, and you're sort of with them in their pain. I go, right back there to John 11, where Jesus goes to the tomb of Lazarus. And if it is true that he, in addition to wood, worked in stone, then he, of all the people in that village, would have known all about the making and the placing of that stone in front of the tomb, right?
Yeah.
So when he says roll the stone away, it's kind of like the plumber going, okay, flush it.
Yeah.
I mean, he knows what that's about, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not to be crude about it, I'm just saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what does he do? He's there and he weeps.
Yeah.
And he knows what he's going to do,
Yeah.
but he knows what that stone represents.
Yeah.
And he also knows that when he pulls it back, what that's going to represent.
Yeah.
So, it's another one of those parallels, Luke.
Well, and again,
it's amazing.
We've tried to leave. We've tried to go, God, there's got to be an easier way, because entrepreneurship is very difficult.
Yep.
And I think in his kindness, he has kept us here, because I think it's going, there's some things I want to show you about myself through the day-to-day work in the way that you minister
to show
people.
you about himself through your work, and to show your customers about himself through your work.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so, just so our Table podcast listeners have it, what's the website address for your company?
Sure. Wayfaren.com, WAYFAREN.com.
WAYFAREN.com.
Yep. And we're in Dallas. We have a very small studio wood shop just south of Deep Ellum.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, this is, as I said at the top, this is a wonderful story, and I am just so delighted that you guys came to share this with our listeners today.
We're honored to be here.
Thank you very
really,
much.
it's a really neat full circle to be students here. Be students here to then come back for
around.
our podcast. So it's really neat.
We've considered, Fortune 500 companies we've talked about in here, and everything in between. And here we're down at the bottom of the food chain to a tiny little boutique consultancy. But God is involved in all of that.
Exactly. And every bit of it. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
So,
thank you.
Thank you.
And if you have a topic you would like us to consider for a future episode of The Table, please email us at thetable@dts.edu. For The Table, I'm Bill Hendricks. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for listening to The Table Podcast. For more podcasts like this one, visit dts.edu/The Table. Dallas Theological Seminary. Teach truth, love well.